code, is it the sanitary code? Yeah, have very distinct ways of collecting, and you want to make sure that you are always in compliance with your state. One of the major things that they suggested was collecting samples inside the homes, and your sanitary code said, no way, Jose, can't do it. All of your collection points must be outside the homes. And so you want to make sure that you are aware of what your state requires. The other thing was the faucet with the inside threads. Well, it's always a recommendation that you do not use those because they can harbor bacteria and things like that. Also, it's very difficult to really clean and disinfect. So again, the smooth surface on the inside. I think one of the best ways to collect your sampling point is to put your own little sampling station in from the distribution system if you have that capability and money to do that. Now, why are we collecting these monthly samples? What's the purpose of the sample? Nay, not so I can regulate you. So what?
Job security.
Job security? He said job security. And you know what? I'm going to work with that. In a way, it is job security because you're the protectors of the environment, right? So you're making sure the integrity of that distribution system is producing potable water of great quality, right? Absolutely, that's the whole purpose. Why are we doing it also? Because they're little microscopic organisms. Every drop of water has millions and millions of bacteria in it. Uh-huh.
Because I'm going to run for mayor one day.
Okay.
To improve upon the quality of life as we know it in our fair community.
Okay. Carl Johnson. To improve upon the quality of life
as we know it in our fair community.
As we know it in our fair community. That is the reason why we are the champions of the environment. All right, microbial quality is very, very important. Maintaining the integrity of the water is critical to what we're doing. Diseases are transmitted by unsafe water. Some of the diseases, typhoid, paratyphoid, amoeba dysentery, bacillary dysentery, cryptosporidium, giardia, cholera, what else? Legionnaire's disease, hepatitis A. Some of these diseases can be very, very vigilant also. Two of these diseases that are up there are chlorine resistant. Which two are those? Cryptosporidium and giardia. Absolutely, they're chlorine resistant, meaning all the disinfection that we do, those little boogers kind of laugh at us and say, hee, I'm still here. So you have to do additional treatment, such as filtration or physical removal, in order to remove those organisms. And as you can see, Cryptosporidium forms a cyst, and when the environment is right, it does thrive. So pathogens are difficult to detect. The film said we don't test for all pathogens, millions of microorganisms, and of those millions that are there, very minute amount are actually pathogenic or disease-causing. So it's difficult to look for the needle in the haystack. However, you've heard the saying, birds of a feather flock together. So we use an indicative organism, the coliform group, and when they are present, remember there is a risk. It is an indication there is a risk of disease there also. E. coli being the most specific indicator because that is the one from, again, the intestines of warm-blooded organisms. We do have the total coliform, non-fecal in nature, naturally occurring, water, soil, and so we will test for both. In the laboratory, when you're doing the analysis, now in the old days, it used to be once you got a positive, you just knew it was a coliform. And then you had to go a step further to confirm or to check to see if it was E. coli by doing another inoculation and putting it in a water bath or an incubator to see whether or not gas was produced. And if gas was produced, then it was indicating that it was fecal. Nowadays, you don't have to do the two-step. You can run them both at the same time, put them under a UV light, and they will fluoresce different colors. And so you know right away whether or not it's fecal or just total. Your total coliform, I think, appear to be yellow under the light, and your fecal a real nice blue color, real pretty blue color. Keep in mind it's just a risk of disease. The point there being, if I come in contact with Mayor Johnson's waste, he's a healthy person, I'm not going to get a disease. If he comes in contact with my waste and I have a disease, there's a possibility of that disease being transmitted. All right, so collection is one of the more important responsibility of the operators. Do you all have to be certified to pull samples? No, not yet. Okay, and you heard what I said, not yet, especially if they've gone from one group, the state pulling in, they're allowing you all to pull it. The next progression is to make sure you're certified. In Texas, you have to be certified to pull samples.
At one point, early on, we went through a training session.
Excellent.
By the state. And then they found some money. So we didn't have to collect them. And then they came back, I don't know. They lost the money. Yeah, maybe 3 or 4 years later, and they said, we don't have it.
Okay, so now you have to
collect
training.
Yeah.
That's good because it's so important. Because 9 times out of 10, when we had issues, do you know what we wrote the state and said the issue was? Operator error in the collection. Yes, sir.
You do have to be registered with the state to drop them off at the lab.
Okay.
To get registered with the state, you have to go through their state training.
Okay, now that's interesting. He said you had to be registered to drop them off at the lab, and in order to be registered, you have to go through the training. Training is key, though, because the operator really play a major role. I don't know how many of you all are dual certified, but in Texas, we can be dual certified, meaning an operator can work at both a wastewater and a water facility at the same time, and 9 times out of 10, he may be collecting water samples in the morning and checking wastewater plants in the afternoon and dropping off those samples prior to going home to the lab, you know, in the evening. So he's had these samples, and sometimes the water and wastewater samples may be put in the same cooler. No. Yeah, you're talking about, that's why operator error. So you want to make sure that you have proper training on looking at the precautions you should be taking in order to take a good sample. If the collection process is not correct, your results will not be valid. So it all starts with collection. And I think they pointed out some very vital things. How many of y'all wear gloves when you're collecting samples? How many of you after today will consider wearing gloves for sample collection? And I know it's water, it's potable, it's treated, so people don't look at it the same as wastewater. But again, it's not so much looking at it, ooh, it's a dirty sample. You don't want to get whatever's on your hands in the water to contaminate your sample, because now your analysis is shot. Remember in the film, they talked about the little kids putting their mouth all on the faucets and things like that. E. coli was not positive, but it could have shown up for total, and that's what they were getting, the hits on the total. So if you can do that just by that casual transmission, if for whatever reason I'm collecting a sample and the sample water runs over my hand in the bottle, I'm transmitting cells, bacteria into that sample bottle. now my sample can be compromised. So that's just something to think about. So very important, correct. Even taking the top off. Sometimes when operators take the top off of bottles, they set that top, and how do they set that top? Whether it's sitting up or sitting down, it's touched something that's contaminated, or if they leave it open up like that, then there's still additional bacteria and stuff that can get into that top. So critical things like that, very important with the collection process. The other thing that they mentioned was having a sample siting plan representative of your distribution system. Now, Randy was telling me earlier in Louisiana, they want to make sure that you're collecting samples from the farthest reach of the distribution system. EPA point of view is, especially if you have more than one sample, you're just not interested in the farther, but you want something that's representative. If you don't have a loop system, you want to make sure you're hitting all those, the main as well as the branches, okay? Loop systems are a little different because you know that water's constantly moving through. So I may hit the farthest reach and then one or two up close. So based on the number of samples you have to collect, make sure you're getting representative. Take into consideration the sizes of your lines, your dead ends, because those areas are important too, especially you have homes and things in those areas, okay? We're going to pull samples based on, how many samples are we pulling per month? Huh? You do one? Okay, and how do you know that you're pulling only one? How do they determine that you're only to pull one sample? Very good. Size of the system, which means what? Population. So that tells me that in their system, they have fewer than 1,000 people. Okay, as the population increases, you're going to have more samples that you'll have to pull. Representative of the system, sterile containers. I can't just pull any bottle off the shelf and collect a sample. I cannot go and get a water bottle and clean it out and collect a sample in a water bottle. Or we're in Louisiana. He said a mason jar. Or mason jar. Can't do it. It has to be a sterilized container. Meaning what? It's gone through the process of not only being cleaned, they've either UV'd it to make sure all the bacteria zapped, sterilized, or it's been autoclaved at a real high temperature for a certain amount of time. So it has to be that. In addition to that, they're putting some type of preservative in that bottle. If the preservative is not there, I can't use it. What preservative are they putting there? Okay, sodium thiosulfate, which is to neutralize the chlorine. Why are we neutralizing the chlorine? We're about to run a bacteriological test. And we want to make sure whatever is there to see if any growth is there. We don't want chlorine there to kill the organisms or to destroy the organisms that are there. The other suggestion was that we're going to cool the sample. Now here, I've had people argue with me on that, and that's fine. And the reason, and usually they are lab people that are arguing with me on it, and they're absolutely right. On the water side, and this is a potable water side, if you truly look at the EPA method for analysis, it does not require this sample to be cooled. Yes?
One new thing is if your lab is TEEX certified, which is the National Lab Accreditation, so it's where most labs are trying to get to.
Yeah.
They require that your sample be cooled because the city of Houston, we recently went through that, and they started requiring all of our samples to be cooled before they're brought in.
Okay, and that's true. Your lab will dictate a lot to you as for how they are receiving the samples, and you want to make sure that you are adhering to that. But if you look at the method, the EPA method of analysis for water sample does not require cooling because there's no enumeration. It's just a presence or absence. That's why the 30 hours to start the test within 30 hours is so critical. On the wastewater side, if you look at the particular method, it does require cooling that sample 4 degrees plus or minus 2 Celsius. Why? Because now we're counting colonies. And so there is a difference, and I often get that with the lab people. There is a difference in the methodology there. But ultimately, if your lab says we're going to reject the sample, if it's not cool, you need to cool your samples. In a lot of cases, if your labs are receiving samples via mail, of course the blue ice can work, but there are some cases, North Carolina, there's no ice, they're just mailing the samples in. Based on where the lab is. And so there's a difference in the methodology. Wanted to throw it out. We are aware of that. It's always good practice is what I fall back. Good practice to do that physical preservation because that stops, slows down whatever is happening in that particular sample. All right, so we're going to determine the number of samples by the population. We have our sample siting plan that has been approved by the state, and that siting plan requires at least 5 addresses, 5 descriptive addresses for collection. Now, am I only going to submit 5? No, I'm going to submit alternative ones too, because if I'm having an issue, or if one of the areas, let's say I'm doing it outside of the home, if it becomes vacant, I'm not pulling a sample there from the outside. I'm going to use one of my alternative ones there. But they have to be approved, so you want to make sure you're submitting them with your plan for approval. And you're going to have a plan both for the community as well as the non-community systems. All right, and we've already said population determines the number of samples pooled. So the other thing that they pointed out, you want to look for and avoid. There are certain types of faucets that are not good sampling sites. Damien, you all said you all were with the school. Where's your sampling site? Describe your sampling point to me. He's thinking awfully long. What was that, Arthur? It's inside a classroom? Or the cafeteria? Oh, very good. And that's one of the things we want to make sure. You stay away from those with a single lever for both hot and cold. So he thought real quick on that one. Damien, thank him for saving you on that one. But in their cases, they are inside. So one of the things they did not do, and I asked them that because they told me they were with the school. And a lot of times in the schools, you know where they go? To the janitorial closet and pool. And that was one of the no-no areas there. So I want to make sure I have controls, both for hot and cold. I'm only collecting from which one? The cold, okay? And I want to make sure if there's an aerator on that faucet that I'm removing the aerator. Right, Arthur? Super. If you're outside, and you all told me you all are outside, Jim, describe where you're pulling samples from.
Sample point, designated sample.
You have designated, oh, you're so good, designated sample. So you all have, Mayor Johnson?
Yes, we have designated samples.
Okay. Were those ones that you all put in, or is it like an outside faucet?
We put them in.
You put them in. Super, I applaud you. Very good. That's why he's going to be Mayor Johnson. Excellent. How are they working for you, and what made you all decide to go that route?
This started back about in the mid to early 90s.
I'm going to have to get my water gun out.
And we started putting them in. And
Okay.
then
Was it because of problems that you were having, or?
we just wanted control of our sample points.
Okay.
And previously, we would go to someone that had an outside faucet.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Mm-hmm.
And so we decided that we would go to a faucet that we would have control over.
Yeah.
That it was protected, it had a cover, it wasn't just sitting out there.
Yeah.
And then as time went on and Ruston was growing, we would, and whenever we had a subdivision coming in or whatever, we would
You
ask
just-
the contractor to go ahead
And put it
put
in.
that in. And
Super, what foresight. Very good, very good. Huh?
vision.
That's a vision. That's why, hey, he's going to be in politics. Who's still using outdoor faucets? You, Randy? No. Okay, yeah. And when you all are using the outdoor faucets, how do you all select? What contact do you make with the homeowners? And
We designed our plan with the state, and we basically made contact with the residents, and we've been using the same locations for years, so
yeah,
most of the people, they know us, they get to know the same sample collector collects every month from them.
yeah. That's good there. And they don't sick the dogs on you when you come.
We have
Yeah.
smooth, I have 3 wells, so we have smooth bib test points, probably 3 on each well.
On the wells?
Up and down the system.
Okay. And
they
then
are
from,
behind residents, but if there's a faucet, the smooth bib is on the adjoining side, so they can't connect anything to it, so they have no control over it.
okay, that's what you use. Very good. All right.
Installed for the residents for the purpose of the sample.
No, that's at the recommendation of the state. When they designed the system, they said must have designated test
You say
points.
they're at a residence, correct?
They're behind.
Behind the
the
residents.
You know,
So it's dedicated.
it's on the
separate.
main,
In essence,
it's not on their house, but it's behind their house.
yeah. So in essence, similar, yeah, the designated, that's good. All right, so make sure that you are paying attention to the precautions that they set forth if you have to utilize residential areas or the outside faucet. Make sure, again, there are no plants, overhanging plants, or plants growing up in there. What about disinfection? Do you all do anything to disinfect the faucets? And again, there are all kinds of theories being thrown around now. For as long as I know, we were always told you disinfect. One while we used bleach, and at one time we went to alcohol. Now the thing is, well, you really don't need to disinfect if it's properly maintained. And if you are disinfecting, you're not disinfecting properly because you're not providing contact time. What do you all use? Heat. So you still use heat, and there's nothing, no attachment, so that's great. So heat here, nothing here.
They indicated to me at one time they wanted to discontinue using disinfectant because someone was allowing the disinfectant to touch the mouth of the bag and get into the water.
Oh, they were,
Self-contaminating.
so the little drop of chlorine into the baggie, it was all an accident.
Because see, the state provided a little bag for it.
Right,
Which is
right.
sealed.
Mm-hmm.
You have the little tab, you rip off the top
Right.
of the tab, grab the 2 little tabs to the side, open it up, and you don't allow it to make contact.
You're not supposed to.
Faucet in any manner. Just collect your water, 4 ounces of water there, and
Right.
seal it, and label it.
So they were disinfecting the faucet, then taking the bag and just wiping it on the outside of the faucet.
House, you just put the bag up right up on
Yeah.
the faucet, in the faucet, let the faucet go down in the bag. Okay,
Or you look,
Contamination, absolutely, absolutely. Okay, that's interesting there. Well, at least you didn't say some were squirting the disinfection in the bag first. Because the sodium thiosulfate will take care of, again, so much chlorine, but if you're just putting it in like that, it's not going to handle that much there. So the recommendation is still that you want to make sure you're providing some type of cleaning, and they mentioned several in the film. You can disinfect with flame or disinfect with alcohol, with bleach. Hydrogen peroxide. Any of you all ever thought about that one? Yeah, it can be used also. So there are a lot of things that are out there, or just flushing. Some people just tend to just think flushing is adequate. Now, testing chlorine, we want to make sure that we're testing for chlorine prior to pulling the sample. One of the reasons being, especially if you're disinfecting with chlorine. Now, if you have a groundwater system and you're not using chlorine, of course there's no need to test for chlorine because you know it's not going to be there. Did I go back too fast? Okay, I think I did. Now I'm going the wrong way. You know when you get new toys? I know, because I'm trying to go back now. May not let me go back, but that's okay. I know what I was going to say. Huh? Yeah, that works well when I know how to use this right here. Have to go to school how to use it for a remote, believe it or not. Yeah. So, but what I was saying on the, I forgot what I was saying now, on the disinfectant, those are some of the things that you can disinfect with. Chlorine, that's where I was with the chlorine residual. If chlorine is present in the water, then we know that the possibility, especially if there's a residual, the demand has been satisfied, so we should be good when we run the sample. If there's no chlorine, and if there is a demand, we don't know whether or not it's been satisfied, then it's more an iffy whether or not the sample is positive or negative. So we test for chlorine. The other thing is, once you flush the line until the temperature change, kind of reduce it to a pencil-sized stream. I don't know if they, well, I do know. They didn't really do that in one of the collection. You don't want water splattering on your bottle or anything like that, because that can also introduce possible contamination. You need at least 100 mils of sample, so make sure you fill it to the line a little above, and make sure when you're doing the, because you all are using the Whirl-A-Pack, that a lot of it does not. You got the right twist of the wrist in order to accomplish that. The laboratory really needs 100 mils of sample for the amount of chemicals that they're going to use to identify whether or not coliforms are present. So do not overfill, but make sure it's 100 mils there. I think those containers hold about 125. You got a line at the 100 mark. Fill out the paperwork completely. The chain of custody is very, very important. You should have a chain of custody from the time that sample was born, cradle to grave. And every time that sample changes hand, there should be a signing off of that, a checking the temperature of the cooler if necessary. Okay, and you want to make sure the correct identification is on there and that it is identified as our monthly distribution sample. Why? Because we will also pull back teeth for construction, for repairs, and all of that. And then we got 30 hours. Now this right here, as was pointed out, the laboratory must begin the analysis within 30 hours of collection. So you can't get the sample to the lab at 29 hours and 30 minutes. And in the state of Louisiana, from what I'm told from the lab people yesterday, they want it there within 24 hours so they can have some leeway of setting that sample up. Another thing is, if you can, as much as possible, avoid bringing samples in closer to the weekend, especially if the lab have days off. So be aware of the lab schedule. If they run 7 days a week, it may not matter.
They don't want them on Friday.
Okay, that's what you're saying, at all. Very good. Yeah, you found that out. You want to make sure that you are adhering to that.
As best as they
Good.
try not to get them there at 29 hours, because it does take a minimum, bare minimum of about 35 minutes to set a sample time. So if you give them less than an hour, they may not get all of these.
Yeah. So if they reject, it means what? You got to go out and collect again. And if you've waited until the end of the month, you may be up the creek without your paddle. One of the things I would suggest in setting up your sampling schedule is that try to get as many samples early on in the month, especially if you're doing quite a lot of them, so you don't run into that situation, especially when you start having to do the repeat samples and all of that. John's like, absolutely. All right, we've mentioned that. I won't go back through that again. As far as your repeat samples, you're all familiar with making sure that we are checking the integrity of the distribution system with the repeat samples, upstream, downstream, original site. Now, if my samples come back positive, okay, now I have to collect my repeat. My repeats must be collected on the same day, or if you look at the language, it's within a 24-hour period. If I have one routine sample, meaning as the Cardell's up here, I may have one sampling site, although the states prefer you to give them at least 5 different ones. I have the option, and I can collect that 4, because I'll be collecting 4 repeats for one routine. I can collect them all from the same faucet on the same day. That's one option. Or in this case, I can also collect one sample every day for 4 consecutive days. They're the only ones with that option when you have one routine, where they don't have to be collected all on the same day. For everybody else with more than one routine samples, all collected within a 24-hour period or on the same day. Okay, violations. If I'm supposed to collect 5 samples and I collect 4 that month because the month ran short, you know, I waited around, didn't have enough time, is it a violation? Absolutely, absolutely. So if I don't collect the required routine samples, it's a violation. I can exceed the maximum contaminant level if I have more than 40 routine samples and greater than 5% are positive. That's an MCL exceedance violation. If I have less than 40 samples, more than 1 positive, that's a violation. In some cases, I've known people to collect more than the required sample to put them in a different bracket so they don't run into those monthly violations. Or acute risk. Now, acute risk is when you have any combination of fecal or E. coli positive, either in the routine or the repeat. So whenever you see fecal or E. coli, that's an acute risk, that's a violation. You need to notify the state when this happens by the end of the next business day, or the way most people like to see it, within 24 hours, the way the state likes you to view it, as soon as possible. In other words, don't wait that 24 hours. As soon as you become aware, go ahead and notify them. And then we have 24 hours to notify our public, television, radio, hand deliver, or any other method approved by your state. You have to make at least 3 good faith efforts to meet all the consumers in your area. And the state may ask you, well, may is being very liberal, you probably will have to issue a boil water notice. And you will continue to try to rectify the problem until it's rectified, and then you will have to lift that boil water notice the same way it was issued. Following, what else? If you have a total positive followed by a repeat total positive, is that an acute? If you have a total positive followed by a repeat total positive, is that an acute? Thank you, no. Why? Because E. coli or fecal was not part of the combination. So this would fall under the tier 2s. I have 30 days to notify the public. I still must notify the state by the end of the following business day. Okay, so you don't get the opportunity to notify the state 30 days down the road. You still notify them within a 24-hour period. Have to collect 5 routine samples the following month. Okay? Now, have a positive original samples. All my repeats are negative. Does EPA allow me to invalidate that positive?
Allow you to do it?
Well, allow the state to, yes.
Yes, I think they can.
Yes, they do. Now, does your state do that? You have to check with your state. There are some states who say, hey, no way, and they do not. Although EPA gives this authorization to the state to determine whether or not they want to invalidate it, some states do not take this option. In other words, if I can prove why that positive is not representative of my distribution system, then I can request the state to invalidate the positive, so I don't have to report it, so I don't have to put it on my CCR, so it does not become a strike against me. And in Texas, we do have that option, and we do go through the process, and some are actually invalidated because of it. All right. There can also be, under this particular rule, there's also the possibility of reduced monitoring. In other words, many of you all are collecting once a month, or if you have a transient system, probably once every 90 days or so, once every 3 months. If you have a stellar performer, no violation, no history, you can request, hey, can I do it less often? So less frequency there. And then you want to, the monthly monitoring worksheets are just there in order, sort of like standard operating procedures. What do I do in case of, if I have positive, how many repeats do I need? Where am I going to take these repeats? Just to keep you on track. I had one customer who ran a seasonal, sort of like a bed and breakfast, seasonal though. And so he actually got a positive, and I think it was in November. Got a positive in November, but that was the month that he was shutting down until the next spring in March. Got the positive. He knew he had to collect the repeats and 5 samples the following month. However, it was not operational, so out of sight, out of mind. Come March, when he geared back up, he did not collect the 5 additional samples. Guess what? Violation. So having the monthly worksheets, or sort of like a day-to-day book in order to record your stuff, is an excellent way to make sure that you're keeping up with what's necessary to keep you in compliance. Okay, questions? No questions? Comments? Love the possibility that now you'll be getting the opportunity to collect your own samples? You do? Yeah. Yeah, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, he's like, so can't do anything but. Just make sure your personnel are well trained and they are aware of the possibility that can occur. All right, where do we go from here? Disinfectant byproducts, any surface water. Any surface water facilities? You have one? What size? Oh, it's a large. Huh? 50,000 people? Okay. What type of filters do you have? You have sand filters? You don't have filters. You have, huh? Oh, conventional, so rapid sand filters type, okay. Okay, the various levels of it. Cool, cool, cool. On the disinfection byproducts, how many of you all been in the business 15 plus years? 15 plus years. All right, will you be truthful with me for a minute? When you first got in the business, as far as disinfection goes, what did they tell you as far as how much to put in or not to put in? Just use a lot. Thank you. Thank you for your honesty. Was that about the same? We were often told the more you put in, the better it is. You're cleaning it up, getting it real good for your customer. Little did we know at the time that we were creating issues that we would have to deal with one day. That's what this module is about, are these byproducts of disinfection with chlorine. And chlorine has been around for a long time, long time. And I can honestly say that it was like, okay, jack it up. Can't smell it, not enough. How? Huh?
You can treat it without very much smell.
I know, but that's unfortunately, when you look at the old school, not that I'm old school, I say, yeah. When you look at the way they were trained, that's right, 3. When you look at the way that it was handled really back in the early years, we just didn't know. We just didn't know. And it was passed along, and it was like, okay, that's the way to go. So in Module 6, we're going to talk about those byproducts that are created. Now, 9 times out of 10, I say 9 times out of 10, usually these byproducts are created when you're working with a water source that has lots of naturally organic matter, such as algae and other stuff. When you look at a surface water plant, and that's why I was asking him about surface water, what's in that surface water? Everything. And if you go to Baytown, they even found a vehicle with bodies in it, in their forebay. And I said, get out of here. They said, yeah, we had 4 bodies and 3 heads. And this had gone on for years until they had cleaned their forebay out. Didn't know it was there and don't know how it got there. True story. And so it's like you want to make sure you're hitting it enough chlorine to take care of issues like that. But the disinfection byproducts are mainly created when you have all the naturally organic matter and all this excessive chlorine that's out there, trying to look for something in order to bind with it, in order to create a stable compound or complete that outer shell when you look at the chemical reaction. And if you have put too much in there, natural organic matter, they're going to bind, they're going to create a byproduct that's detrimental to our health. All right, so DPDs, we're going to look at the regulatory overview. We're going to describe the health effects of them. We're going to look at the monitoring requirements, and we're going to discuss methods for reducing the disinfection byproducts. So in this module, we're looking at disinfection byproducts, so I'll be batting back and forth, as well as microbial contaminants. And when I refer to microbial contaminants, mainly we're looking at the Giardia and Cryptosporidium, the ones that are chlorine resistant. As far as microbial contamination, I think we all can say that there's always a possibility if you have some of the organisms that cause disease, they can be detrimental to our health also. Even in the early days, people were wise enough to understand if I go to a nearby lake and pool my water, may not be such a good idea. But if I move away back from that lake and dig a hand-dug well, where that water now has a possibility of filtering through some of the layers of sand and dirt prior to getting to that well, that may be a little safer to go. We have all the hand-dug wells very near the water course. The introduction of chlorine, when they discovered that little squiggly things were in the water, and that was with the discovery of the microscope, and that we can utilize chlorine in order to neutralize or kill or destroy those pathogens, that was a good thing. Now we started feeling real good about what we were doing. However, years later, it became a sense of concern because now, with further testing, the byproducts started to show up. So chlorine brought both a sense of safety as well as a concern with the disinfectant byproducts. When you look at chlorination, they in the book said it was one of the major public health advances of the 20th century. In other words, it was almost the best thing since sliced bread. When Columbus first came to the Americas, 80% of his people died. Why do you think they died? And it was not the Native Americans that took them out. It was the little microscopic organisms or waterborne pathogens, 80%. That's staggering. War of 1812. More people died because of waterborne diseases than from gunshot wounds. That was almost like a biological weapon. That's staggering when you look at the numbers that were taken out because of epidemics such as that. Even when you think of the 20th century, can you think of cases where we've had issues with waterborne pathogens? People may not have died, but were affected. Can you think of one?
Yeah, there's one in the news a week or two ago, South Louisiana, isn't there? A couple of people died from
That's what I'm gonna have to research that. Brain eating amoeba, huh? Huh? St. James Parish. I was gonna look that up because they mentioned that. Came from the water.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, yeah, there's small cases all over.
Right, all over. Absolutely. We do hear the cases from here to there. Your book has a chart that shows some of the recent ones over the last, I guess, 20 plus years. Pennsylvania, 87, 5,000 cases. Texas is up there quite a few times there. You're looking for where that is, right, in your book. And now I need to tell you exactly where it is. It's not in Module 16. This is in Module, where's the Total Coliform Rule? It's in the Total Coliform Rule chapter. Is it 12? Then that's where you will find this, I believe. And that is if my memory serves me right. Sometimes it does, sometimes it takes me a minute. Yeah, if you will go to page 1218. You can see some of the systems that were affected. That first table there is in your small to mid-sized systems. And then the last table is actually E. coli. On that last table, the Walkerton, Ohio should be Canada instead of Ohio. It should be Canada. But you can see a number of outbreaks that have occurred. This is 2013, the one in Canada not too long ago. One of the things that we can say when we look at the table, there are a number of incidents that have occurred within this century. However, look at the number of deaths associated. What can you tell me about the number of deaths?
6 out of all that occurred.
So so we're doing something right. The other thing this also points out is back to that earlier statement. Healthy individuals rarely require medical attention because their systems will fight it all. Okay, so we have had incidents where there have been a number of outbreaks. As we said, Pennsylvania is up there several times. Oregon is up there, and quite a number of cases there. How many of y'all remember the earthquake 2010 in Haiti? Yeah, major earthquake. Took out over 200,000 people, just the earthquake alone. Then you have all these relief workers rushing in to help out, right? From all of that right there, guess what? There was contamination of their water source, which was unexpected, not intentional, but because of an error. 6,000 people, more than 6,000 people died because of cholera, saying that these diseases are still out there and rampant, but it's through the treatment that we can not eradicate them, but hold them at bay. But cholera in 2010, 6,631 deaths at the time this was reported because of that outbreak. Milwaukee, we use this one a lot in Texas. 1993, as far as our teachings and safety, 1993, Milwaukee had an outbreak, Cryptosporidium. And if you ever watch Monsters Inside of Me, they actually did an episode on this outbreak here. Again, where it passes through their water system for 2 weeks. It passed on through. Almost 500,000 people were affected. A little over 100 died. The ones that died were the ones with the compromised immune system or the very elderly. Other people experienced cramps, fever, diarrhea, dehydration caused by the pathogens. Again, Cryptosporidium is a problem because it does not respond the way we want it to respond to our disinfectant that we use most often, which is chlorination, highly resistant to chlorination. And so it has to be physically removed from the water. So, 1996 amendments, EPA develops rules to balance the risks between those microbial pathogens such as Cryptosporidium and Giardia, as well as the disinfection byproducts. This is when, again, we got rules on the books that we need to make sure that we are following. Stage 1 disinfectant and disinfection byproducts kind of put in a rulemaking strategy to comply with the 96 amendments in 98. The interim enhanced surface water treatment rule was also a part of this initial phase, and then we have the stage 2. It was built on the stage 1, but now they were addressing the higher risk public water systems, and in addition to that, they put in very specific wording as to Cryptosporidium and other microbial pathogens that are present. In addition, your stage 2 disinfection byproducts rule said that not only are we looking at treatment, but now we're going into your distribution system. And we are identifying those distribution systems, point in the distribution system with high risk for your disinfectant byproducts. So many of you all had to actually go out there and do the TTHMs and haliacetic acids from your distribution system, right? Had any hits? Any high ones? They've been good. Okay. Helped after, yeah. Okay, okay. The high ones. And a lot of people do opt to use an alternative disinfectant, so the chlorine is binding with something else, and in his case, it's binding with the ammonia. It's not free to bind with the organic matter. So once you've identified the areas that were high, you were to then, under stage 2, start using those as your sampling points where you have the high concentration. Now, community non-transient, non-community water system that produced or delivered water that was treated with a primary or residual disinfectant other than UV fell up under stage 2. Now, if you had UV, it's not a chemical method. You didn't have to do stage 2. All right, we've gone through what community systems, non-community systems were. So the disinfection byproducts that are formed, total trihalomethanes, you have several species there all together, although when they do the analysis, they do break it out as to which is present, and then you have to total them up for your results. The maximum contaminant level must be below 80 parts per billion or 0.8 milligrams per liter. For haloacidic acids, again, we're looking at several different species, 0.06 milligrams per liter or 60 parts per billion. Those are your maximum contaminant levels. Any of you all doing quarterly testing of TTHMs or haloacidic acids? You all, yeah, no, you probably, nobody else? Everybody doing it? Okay. You know? Ruston. Okay. You go back to, yeah, okay. So the rest of you all are doing the quarterly too? They're like, well, no. All right, this is the compliance timeline. And again, depending on where you are, the size of the system, you may or may not be at that area. For instance, if you have a non-transient, non-community system, you have until October 1st, 2013, which comes up in a few days, to begin your subpart 5 of the stage 2 compliance. So you may not have done anything as of yet, but after October, you're on it, right, Randy? He's like, go back to that little disc to make sure that you're doing what you're supposed to do. For communities less than 10,000, you did the initial distribution system evaluation. You've turned in that report, and again, compliance for you starts after October 1, 2013. We're in 2013 right now, right? So you have a couple of days to look up and see what you need to be doing to be in compliance there. For your larger system, systems, you can see that some of them actually started back in 2006. And so you're well underway with whatever compliance time schedule that you should be doing. Health concerns with microbial pathogens, and we often associate, waterborne diseases with irrigation of crops and things like that. So when you start hearing stuff over the news, the spinach is contaminated or something like that, a lot of time these cases come to the forefront because people get sick. People start going to the doctor, then they try to link what do these people have in common to try to find the culprit there. And so a lot of times you can have anywhere from mild stomach cramps, diarrhea, dehydration. Compromised systems, again, it will be much more severe response to the pathogen. And it even says death for those with weakened immune systems. Your disinfectant byproducts, we may not see the physical symptoms of gastrointestinal illness because with the byproducts, these are carcinogens, especially to laboratory organisms in which they've been tested. They've also been shown to be a problem as far as developmental and reproductive. So the byproducts produce a different set of symptoms that may not always be evident right away. When we look at the disinfection byproducts, microbial, we go back then to the various rules regulating how we are to deal with these contaminants. Earlier we talked about the Groundwater Rule. The Groundwater Rule is applicable to all groundwater and groundwater systems under the influence of surface water. And remember, the purpose there was to identify those that are fecally contaminated or have that high microbial risk associated with it. So I'm not going to recant this, but basically with the groundwater it says to do your sanitary surveys, do your source water monitoring. Source water monitoring may be triggered by your positive coliform in your distribution system. So all of that is in place, and make sure that you do your corrective action. Correct all repairs to well pads, sanitary seals, treatment equipment, and make sure you eliminate all cross connection for groundwater systems. I have a lot of question marks, which means I may not know what a cross connection is. What's a cross connection? Help me out. Very good. I like that. Or it could be a questionable water, or water treated to a lesser degree. Give me examples of a cross connection. Yes. So,
One prime example stands out in Louisiana
what?
is from Pineville, Louisiana, where they did a connection, collected a water line to a sewer line.
Oh, because the sewer line was a force main?
And it went for months until people started receiving samples of byproduct out of it.
You're pulling my leg on that.
No, I'm not. I'm very serious. This is in a record recording, and it's taught just about in every class that you attend.
And they were up for the most prestigious award in the U.S.
Help me to understand. We have the lines in the ground. If I have a sewer main, on that main, there is language on there that says pressurized wastewater, stenciled on the pipe.
Don't exist in many systems. Do not exist.
You got old ductile pipe, it's just,
Some systems still have the old metal lines.
They did,
First thing you see is rust.
they did say that there was a light at the end of the tunnel on it. They were studying it because the water still
Was coming out.
great
Mm.
because they were on top of it so well. And now third world countries were wondering, could they recycle their water?
Oh, yeah.
So,
There's no new water. Toilet to tap, Tyler, Texas.
well, now we do have a recycling plant in Monroe.
Hmm.
I've been through that plant where they are recycling
Wastewater.
wastewater.
Huh? Okay, and we treat it, put it back in the aquifer. Yeah,
They do that at Fort Bossier.
yeah. Huh?
they use that treated water for cooling water at the
Oh, yeah. Okay. Wow, very good. So there's no new water. Flush today, table tomorrow. Yeah,
All water in New York has been through someone else's kitchen at least about a dozen times.
yeah.
Shreveport's sewage effluent goes into Red River,
Uh-huh.
and Bossier's head is in Red
The
River.
Red River.
Then they dump back into Red River and make a shadow again.
That is the cycle of life. You put it in, I'm pulling it out. It's my drinking water. That's why it's so critical what we were going to do. You had another example?
Well, I mean, a lot of times, not here in the city of Ruston, because we're such a large municipality.
Uh,
But a lot of times they'll have people that have a water system,
uh-huh,
water well,
uh-huh.
and they had the water well, and so they want to use their water well to water their yard,
Mm-hmm.
and so,
And sometimes it's even more direct than that as far as the tie-in. You're absolutely right with private
Well,
wells.
there was one example in the class in Monroe somewhere, someone had a chemical at a farm, had a huge chemical
Tank or, yeah.
poison tied to their faucet. They had a water main break, created a siphon effect, and it siphoned that entire tank of cotton poison or whatever it was
Yeah.
into the system.
All right, so absolute elimination, all possible cross connection. How do we do that? Air gap. Can't go wrong. Physical space between the two. Or if I can't put an air gap in, because my pipe is under pressure, okay, an approved backflow prevention device. Very good. All right. Now, this is the same as the groundwater rule, and that's on the groundwater side. Let's look at the surface water. Now, as far as disinfection byproducts go and surface water, we're going to look at the surface water treatment rule. Who knows what's in the surface water treatment rule? And again, it's applicable to all surface waters as well as groundwaters under the influence of surface water. Any shallow groundwater wells that you may be influenced by surface? You've done the analysis because, again, under the surface water treatment rule, you had to do an assessment of your shallow wells to see whether or not you had the surface water organisms, if the chemical composition fluctuated whenever there was a weather episode, in order to see that. What else there? So with this, it's targeting, again, Cryptosporidium, and because of that, all surface water plants, and all is all, must employ some form of filtration. It can be anything, rapid sand filter, even a slow or diatomaceous earth, could be membrane filtration, but you must employ some form of filtration in order to remove the Cryptosporidium. So once you've identified those high risks,